The world is holding its breath. In capitals across the globe, leaders and citizens alike are gripped by a sense of foreboding, as if the very air is charged with uncertainty. The tension is palpable, stretching from the corridors of power to the streets where ordinary people go about their lives, all aware that something monumental is unfolding. In bustling city squares and quiet rural towns, people gather around glowing screens, their faces illuminated by breaking news. Conversations are hushed, eyes darting between headlines and each other, as the world collectively waits for the next development. The sense of unity and anxiety is striking. No one is untouched by the gravity of the moment. Streets that once echoed with the sounds of daily life now stand eerily silent at dawn. Newsrooms buzz with urgency, journalists racing to keep up with the relentless pace of events. In government chambers, lawmakers sit in tense silence, aware that their decisions could shape the fate of millions. On June 4, 2025, Donald Trump shattered the uneasy calm with a single post on his Truth Social account. His message was clear and uncompromising: Iran must halt all uranium enrichment permanently or face U.S. military action. The ultimatum reverberated instantly, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and igniting a firestorm of speculation. The threat of war, once a distant possibility, now loomed over the Middle East like a gathering storm. Fighter jets streaked across desert skies, sirens wailed in cities, and military convoys rolled through the twilight, their presence a stark reminder of how close the world stood to the brink. Diplomats scrambled to open back channels, desperate to avert disaster. Generals pored over maps in war rooms, weighing every possible scenario. On trading floors, the markets convulsed, investors reacting to every rumor and headline as the global economy braced for impact. Trump, never one to mince words, accused Tehran of stalling and playing for time. He warned the world that the clock was ticking and that patience was running out. In Tehran, the mood was equally tense as leaders weighed their options under the relentless pressure of a public countdown. For Europe, the crisis was a moment of deep anxiety, threatening to unravel years of fragile diplomacy. In Israel and Saudi Arabia, the threat validated their worst fears, prompting heightened security and urgent consultations. Across the region, alliances were tested and old rivalries reignited. The stakes could not be higher: a nuclear crisis with consequences that would ripple far beyond the Middle East. The specter of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, now felt dangerously close, as warning signs flashed across the globe and news outlets issued urgent alerts. At the heart of the standoff was enriched uranium, a substance that, in small amounts, powers cities, but in large quantities, holds the potential for unimaginable devastation. The world's attention was fixed on the centrifuges spinning deep within fortified facilities, symbols of both progress and peril. Iran insisted its nuclear ambitions were peaceful, a claim met with deep skepticism in Washington. U.S. intelligence briefings painted a different picture, a nation inching ever closer to the threshold of nuclear weapons capability. Outside embassies, protesters demanded action or restraint, their voices echoing the divisions within the international community. Years of crippling sanctions and broken promises had brought both nations to this breaking point. In Iran, ordinary citizens bore the brunt, shopping in stores with empty shelves, their hopes for relief fading with each new round of negotiations. The memory of past diplomatic failures haunted every conversation. With a deadline just days away, the world watched as a high-stakes geopolitical thriller played out in real time. News anchors struggled to keep pace with the deluge of updates, while leaders in every time zone monitored the situation, aware that history was being written before their eyes. Every move, every statement was scrutinized for hidden meaning. Analysts dissected satellite images, journalists pressed for answers, and military experts debated the odds of war or peace. The world was on edge, searching for any sign that the crisis might be diffused or about to explode. Behind closed doors, negotiators faced a stark choice: find common ground or risk plunging the world into chaos. Each handshake was fraught with tension, every word weighed for its potential to tip the balance toward resolution or disaster. The answer, for now, lay in secret negotiations between two bitter enemies. In dimly lit rooms, diplomats traded proposals and ultimatums, searching for a path forward that might avert catastrophe. The stakes had never been higher. As the clock ticks down, the world wonders: will diplomacy prevail, or will the ultimatum be enforced? The next hours will decide not just the fate of two nations, but the course of history itself. To understand this crisis, we rewind to 2015. That year, Iran and world powers struck the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal. Its goal: prevent Iran from building a nuclear bomb. Iran agreed to scale back its nuclear program, dismantle centrifuges, and ship out enriched uranium. In return, crippling sanctions were lifted. International inspectors verified Iran's compliance. Critics argued the deal ignored Iran's missiles and regional meddling and worried about sunset clauses. Still, supporters saw it as the best way to keep Iran from a bomb without war. For a time it worked. Iran's nuclear ambitions were boxed in, and the world breathed easier. The deal was fragile, but it held. It was a rare triumph of diplomacy over conflict. But that fragile peace was about to shatter. The dam was breaking. In May 2018, President Donald Trump made a dramatic announcement from the White House. The United States would withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. Trump called the agreement one of the worst deals ever, arguing it failed to address Iran's missile program and regional activities. The move marked a sharp break from the previous administration's approach and sent shockwaves through the international community. Almost immediately, the U.S. reimposed tough economic sanctions on Iran, targeting its vital oil exports, banking sector, and key industries. The Trump administration didn't stop there. It launched what it called a maximum pressure campaign, layering on new sanctions and warning other countries not to do business with Iran. The goal was clear: squeeze Iran's economy until its leaders had no choice but to negotiate a broader, tougher deal. The administration hoped that by isolating Iran diplomatically and economically, it could force Tehran back to the negotiating table. But the strategy also put the U.S. at odds with its closest allies, who had spent years crafting the original agreement. European leaders scrambled to keep the deal alive, insisting it was the best way to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. They tried to set up special financial channels to help European companies keep trading with Iran, but the threat of U.S. penalties proved too great. One by one, foreign investors pulled out, and major projects ground to a halt. The impact on Iran's economy was swift and severe. The value of the Iranian rial plummeted, inflation soared, and ordinary Iranians faced shortages of food and medicine. The economic benefits that Iran had hoped for under the deal evaporated almost overnight, replaced by hardship and uncertainty. Feeling betrayed by the U.S. exit and frustrated by Europe's inability to deliver relief, Iran's leaders began to lose patience. In 2019, they announced they would no longer abide by key limits of the nuclear deal, openly breaching its terms for the first time. Iran ramped up its nuclear activities, enriching uranium to higher levels than allowed, installing advanced centrifuges, and rebuilding its stockpile of nuclear material. Each move was carefully calibrated, a signal to the world that without economic relief, Iran would not restrain its nuclear ambitions. Iranian officials insisted their steps were reversible, but only if sanctions were lifted. Meanwhile, public anger grew, with protests erupting over the economic crisis and the government's response. The standoff deepened, and trust between Iran and the West eroded further. As Iran's nuclear program accelerated, experts warned that the so-called breakout time, the period Iran would need to build a nuclear bomb if it chose to, shrank dramatically. What had once been over a year was now measured in just a few weeks, raising alarm bells around the world. International inspectors struggled to keep up, and headlines warned of a new nuclear crisis. The world found itself closer to the risk of an Iranian bomb than at any point since the deal was signed. Tensions soared in the region. Military forces on all sides went on high alert, and the risk of miscalculation or conflict grew with each passing month. The cycle of escalation had truly begun. Diplomats rushed to contain the crisis, but the standoff was more dangerous than ever. The world watched anxiously as the situation teetered on the edge of confrontation. With the stakes higher than ever, the future of the Iran nuclear issue and the security of the region hung in the balance. June 2025. The world is watching as the standoff between the United States and Iran enters a new, uncertain phase. Trump's maximum pressure campaign, once touted as a strategy to force Iran's hand, ultimately failed to break the country's resolve. Yet, in a twist characteristic of Trump's approach, this failure has set the stage for a fresh round of high-stakes negotiations. The air is thick with anticipation, and both sides are recalibrating their strategies, knowing that the next moves could reshape the region for years to come. With just a week left before the self-imposed deadline, Trump's public demand is unmistakable. Zero uranium enrichment by Iran, not just for now, but forever. He repeats this mantra at every opportunity, making it clear that, in his view, any compromise on this point would be a sign of weakness. This demand goes far beyond the terms of the original nuclear deal, which permitted Iran to enrich uranium at low levels under strict international monitoring. Trump's new red line is designed to be uncompromising, a signal to both Iran and the world that the U.S. is raising the stakes. The U.S. administration frames the situation as a stark, binary choice. Iran must dismantle its enrichment program entirely or face severe consequences, economic, diplomatic, and potentially military. The message is delivered with unmistakable gravity, leaving little room for ambiguity. This hardline stance is not just about Iran. It plays well with Trump's political base at home, who see him as a tough negotiator unwilling to back down. It also reassures key allies like Israel, who have long viewed any Iranian enrichment as an existential threat. But behind closed doors, the reality is more nuanced. U.S. negotiators are quietly floating a phased deal. Iran could be allowed temporary low-level enrichment under strict oversight, with the promise of future civilian reactors and even participation in a regional nuclear consortium. These are significant concessions, designed to entice Iran back to the table without appearing to capitulate. Under this plan, Iran would gradually scale back its domestic enrichment activities, but only after a series of confidence-building steps and international guarantees. The process would be slow, deliberate, and closely monitored. Publicly, Trump continues to demand total surrender, projecting strength and certainty. Privately, his team is working overtime to craft a compromise that could be sold as a win to both sides. A delicate balancing act that requires both bluster and flexibility. It's classic Trump. Escalate the crisis, dominate the headlines, and then offer a solution that pulls back from the brink just enough to claim victory. The world has seen this playbook before, but the stakes have never been higher. Now, with the deadline looming and tensions at a boiling point, the question remains, will Iran interpret this as a genuine opportunity for peace, or as a cleverly disguised trap? The clock is ticking, and every hour brings new uncertainty. The world holds its breath, waiting for Iran's answer, a decision that could alter the course of history. For Iran, enrichment is about sovereignty and pride. Leaders insist nuclear technology is their right under the NPT. The U.S. demand for zero enrichment is seen as an insult and a humiliation. Supreme Leader Khamenei calls a nuclear industry without enrichment useless. Iran's negotiators say, no enrichment, no deal, no nuclear weapons, we have a deal. After the U.S. broke the last agreement, trust is gone. U.S. promises of future reactors sound hollow to Tehran. With regional allies weakened, Iran's nuclear program is its last symbol of strength. Giving it up now would be seen as surrender. The standoff has the world on edge. Saudi Arabia, Iran's rival, fears war could wreck its economy and Vision 2030 plans. In a rare move, Saudi officials urged Iran to accept Trump's offer, warning of Israeli strikes. Israel sees an Iranian bomb as an existential threat and doubts diplomacy will work. Trump has warned Israel not to disrupt talks, but Israeli patience is thin. Russia, eager to mediate, has its own interests and may not align with Washington. China, a key Iranian oil buyer, wants stability and opposes unilateral sanctions. Every major power is calculating its next move. The region is a powder keg. The world holds its breath. The deadline is days away. If talks fail, war is a real risk. A U.S. or Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites would be massive, with no guarantee of success. Iran would retaliate with missiles and proxy attacks across the region. The Strait of Hormuz could be closed, sending oil prices soaring. The global economy would reel. Recession, inflation, and market chaos. The human cost suffering refugees, and a new breeding ground for extremism. Even without war, Iran could race to a bomb, triggering a nuclear arms race. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt might follow. The global non-proliferation regime would be shattered. The world would be far less safe. The stakes are existential. Is Trump's ultimatum real, or just high-stakes theater? This is the Trump doctrine: public threats, private deals. The secret U.S. proposal suggests zero enrichment isn't truly non-negotiable. By setting the bar high, Trump can claim victory with any tougher deal. But dismissing the threat as bluff is dangerous. Trump is unpredictable and pressure from allies is intense. If Iran defies him, Trump's credibility is on the line. The Trump doctrine blends real threat with negotiation. Brinkmanship is risky. One misstep could trigger disaster. In this tense standoff, a single mistake could turn a bluff into catastrophe. The world waits, hoping for restraint. As the deadline nears, the world stands at a crossroads. Diplomacy is fraught with mistrust, conflict promises chaos. The fate of millions rests on a handful of leaders. The core problem: neither side trusts the other. Iran doubts U.S. promises, the U.S. doubts Iran's intentions. The secret U.S. proposal tries to build a bridge, future reactors for present concessions. But for Iran, trading its last leverage for a promise from its enemy may be too much. The world watches, hoping reason prevails. Is this brinkmanship or the end of the line? The answer will echo for generations.